Hi, and welcome back to The Layout. Today, we'll take a look at our modern locomotive fleet that you can find in many of our videos and here on the Asheville District Layout. This includes Norfolk Southern locomotives, foreign power, passenger engines, and even some steam engines. So as always, thanks for watching. Let's go ahead and get started. Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we are just outside of the layout room. I've commandeered the pool table here for a few minutes because of the good lighting, and I can lay out the locomotives. It just felt a little bit cramped trying to do this inside of the layout room at the yard. So I have some foreign power laid out here to the left, off to the right. Moving along, we have some of our GE locomotives on our Norfolk Southern fleet, some EMD locomotives, and then some switchers, oddballs, and our steam locomotives as well. So this is a pretty comprehensive view of all of our locomotives. I'm going to go down the list, and all of these have been customized in one way or another, some more so than others. But I thought I'd just talk through each of them real quick to kind of show you what they are, what's been done to them. This represents just a lot of time and work that I put into these, so it's kind of fun to share them with you guys, show you what's new. You may have noticed that some of the locomotives in my previous update are no longer here. And I've got some new ones as well. I'm constantly selling off old ones, acquiring new ones, and just kind of keeping the fleet updated and updating new locomotives as they come along as well. You also notice it's not totally modern. A lot of these locomotives are no longer on the prototype roster, but they're memories that we had grown up and are kind of fun to keep around the layout. So I guess you can say it's not totally a modern fleet, but there's modern locomotives and some older ones as well mixed in. But to answer a couple questions off the bat, most of our locomotives are equipped with Locksound 5, and all of them have custom sounds. It's something I've really enjoyed doing. I'm not always here at the layout anymore, so when I'm gone and away, a lot of times I'll work on the custom sounds and then update them once I come back to the layout. So it's kind of a fun way for me to continue modeling, even if I'm not actually here physically able to work on the locomotives. As far as acquiring them, if it's a used or older locomotive, I'll pick it up off a Facebook group or off of eBay. But any new locomotive that I pre-order, which is a majority of these, I'll actually go through Lombard Hobbies, and just wanted to give them a plug and a thank you. They're good friends of mine. I went to school in Chicago, just a couple minutes away from that store, and I know the owners really well. They're friends of mine, and so they do great work. I trust them. Wouldn't recommend it to anybody I don't. And so because they're my friends, I just wanted to give them a little shout out and thank you for helping me with a lot of these. So anyways, we will work our way down the list, starting with some of the foreign power. The first three are some Utah Belt locomotives. It's actually a fictional railroad created by Eric Bruman, and was a video that inspired me growing up. My dad and I read a lot about them in magazines and a lot of other people in the hobby. So I'm actually doing a video series on these as they work their way across the country to different layouts, so it's kind of fun. These are 3-scale trains, ES44 ACs. These are the kind of earlier Tier 3 versions, not the Tier 4 GEVOs, but these are totally custom painted. They're originally KCS units, top to bottom, custom painted in. They all have Locksound 5. I added some PTC antennas, which look great. Again, to plug another local manufacturer, I'll put a link to those in the description if you want some of these. If you have any questions too about any of these locomotives, let me know in the comment section below. I'll do my best to get back to you. One thing I did to all three of these as well is these locomotives had like a emergency light on the nose, something the old Southern Pacific locomotives had, and it was a fun thing to model. Moving on to a couple of Union Pacific locomotives, we got 3 of them. The first 2 are Overland AC 4400s. So this is a Southern Pacific locomotive which I patched, weathered, has Locksound 5, and added some PTC on top. This is technically an AC 4400 and an AC 6000 car body, and that's different from the AC 6000 locomotive because it has 1 smokestack on top. It's a super small detail, but these were delivered by GE with the option to upgrade the locomotive to an AC 6000 or 6000 horsepower engine because it wasn't totally developed and working well when they came out with these locomotives. And you can see the difference here. This is a true AC 6000, which has the 2 smokestacks, or sorry, wrong one, 2 smokestacks up top. That really kind of is the dead giveaway for either a 6,000 horsepower unit or a 4,000 horsepower unit. Something fun about this one is because there's so much space in these Overland locomotives, I took a 3D printed prime mover, opened up the door and put that inside. So just a neat little detail you can't do on many plastic models. All right, so moving down the list, a couple Atlas locomotives actually. This 9414 is the first locomotive that we had with sound. It has the old QSI sound still in it. And even though it doesn't sound anywhere as good as the new Lock Sound 5s, it's kind of a fun way to remember and see how far things have come. This actually sounds like a jet engine when you put it up next to some of the Lock Sound 5s. It's horrible sound, but you know, not trying to knock the company. It's just come a long ways in the past 10 years. So kind of fun to have to kind of remember how far it's come, you could say. Also, same thing with this Atlas. It's a Dash-8. Currently, this just has DCC. It will get DCC and sound soon enough, but I have a weathering video on how I did the turbo fire and some of the details on that burn marks there. Put a link in the description if you would like to check that out. Next up are a couple of BNSF scale trains locomotives. It's a Dash-9 and a Gevo. I really haven't had to do too much to these. Some of these new locomotives have so many details out of the box. I don't really have to do a whole lot. A couple of small details that I will do to locomotives are to tint the windows a little bit extra. You can see here, these locomotives, they don't look bad, but they don't have a ton of tint. So when these locomotives come from the factory, I'll take a thick, extra thick Sharpie and just cover over the backside of the windows. And then also paint the gaskets around the windshields black to kind of hide the orange behind them. It really adds a lot of depth, and I think makes them look a lot better. It's super small details, but really make the cabs look a lot more realistic in my opinion. A couple easy things you can do to really improve the look of your locomotives there. And then our last BNSF locomotive is this SD60M. I always loved the look of these 3-window cabs. Again, I painted the gaskets, but nothing too crazy as far as custom painting or weathering on that one. All right, up here at the next row, working our way down the foreign power, we have a couple CSX locomotives. In the middle is the AC6000, which I showed you before. And then I have a ES44AC in the back and an AC4400 in the front. These are all overland locomotives. I typically won't get an overland unless there's no option for these in plastic that I think look good. And for these, there aren't. This is a version of an ES44AC that has the new radiator, but an older cab. Nobody makes it in brass. I thought it was cool looking, or nobody makes it in plastic, so that's why I ended up picking those up in brass. So these are a nice set of 3 locomotives. All 3 of them are overland. All 3 were weathered and have sound and all the upgrades to make them run well. So this will be on a Duke Power coal train that I'm working on. Also is this KCS Gevo. This is a scale trains locomotive, an Athearn Dash-9, and a Rapido Dash-8. This one is still in the works. Actually meant to finish up a couple days ago, but I realized I left the handrails at my house. I brought it back home with me to film and to do a weathering video on it, but left some of the detail parts back home. So I guess I'll finish it up next time I'm back here with the layout. So anyways, I'm also finished up this Rapido Dash-8. This is an old version, but I took the Caslo detail kit. There was another manufacturer that made these and added all the see-through grills, see-through steps, all the details, and weathered it as well. So it's a Rapido Dash-8, but heavily modified, heavily detailed, and had the weights removed so you can really see through all the vents and grills back here, and really looks a lot better. A couple Amtrak locomotives. I'm working on another P42, but that's an Athearn. This is a Rapido as well. 2 locomotives that we use on local and long distance passenger trains here in the layout. All right, so moving on to some of the Norfolk Southern locomotives. The majority of the GEs are scale trains, the majority of the EMDs are Athearn. I'll mention it if they are anything else, but the first 2 are ET44ACs. Other than custom sounds, they're pretty much out of the box. 8146 is one of the only Norfolk Southern ES44ACs with a P5 horn. Small detail, but I think it's a cool sounding old Southern Railway horn that somehow made its way onto one of these new locomotives. So I modeled that here. Still have to replace the actual model of the horn, but the sound is correct for it. I'll get the new P5 horn installed here in the next couple days before I leave. One of our, I guess 2 of our 3 heritage units on the layout are the Southern Interstate locomotives. These are brand new from Scale Train, spectacular models. Just wanted to give them a little plug as well. I've got the PTC antennas on top with all the tread and safeties, you know, grip and all that on top, as well as the Southern logo on the back. I think I mentioned this in a video for them, but it was an afterthought that was added like 5 or 6 years after they delivered the locomotive. So it's feedback that they got from you know, rail fans and modelers, and they actually applied to the real locomotive. So I thought it was cool that actual railroad company took feedback and changed the paint scheme. So it's an up-to-date, totally modern version of the 8099 unit here. Both of these have custom sounds. Something kind of a fun fact about the 8105, it has a K5 HLA horn. I don't even know what that means, but it's different. It sounds different than all the other Jevos, and I'll show you a video here of it coming by. I took a YouTube video of this and then put it into the model here, so it actually represents the exact horn recorded off the prototype. We have a couple ES44 DCs. These are a little older generation Jevos. 7667 was the last, or the engine to lead the last freight train over the loops. So it's kind of a fun memory for us to have here on the layout. And of course, that engine was something that nobody made in brass or in plastic. So I had to customize it. It has the newer style radiator section. You can see that is different from the older style one here with the big square vent. Really small details, but that's kind of what brings these to life. And I enjoy modeling it, kind of the small details that you can see once you start looking closely. Both of these are Athearn Genesis though, and have been weathered, have lock sound LEDs like the rest of the models. 8387 is an Atlas Dash-8. Pretty out of the box other than all new lights, all new sounds, and some weathering as well. This has got to be one of my favorite locomotives. I always love the standard cab Dash-8s on the layout. 8759 is an Atlas Dash-8 that's been heavily modified. It's got some Overland brass parts like the AC unit up top and ditch lights. It's got brass handrails, all sorts of lights, and I'll show a video of this running. You can see all the lights it's got on it at night, as well as custom horns and all sorts of details to match the prototype. See, here's the other side as well. It's got the box up front and all sorts of little oddballs that Norfolk Southern had on the prototype locomotive that nobody models that have gone into this, such as the style of the nose, the smokestack, and all that, which were modeled pretty much down to the D. So it's a fun locomotive to have here on the layout. Next is our row of Dash-9s. I don't think any Norfolk Southern fleet or layout would be complete without a couple Dash-9s. All of these have been customized, have custom lights. A lot of them have the control stands corrected to the correct configuration that Norfolk Southern has. So small details like that. These are all scale trains. 9256 is a Operation Lifesaver unit that I custom painted. And then this 8982 is a fun locomotive. It was done by Rob Arsenal. I think that's how you say his name. He does a lot of great weathering. I think he's out of Canada. But this is a locomotive that he's done that I was able to pick up secondhand, and I renumbered it, added some cool custom sounds to it you can see here. But that's what that is. And then we have some top hat or C40-9 locomotives with the standard cabs. All three of these are scale trains that have either been custom painted or weathered, and like the rest have lock sound and some upgraded LEDs. Lastly, here in the front is a C39-8. This is an older locomotive, no longer with Norfolk Southern, a prototype, but I remember seeing these growing up, so definitely a fun thing to have around the layout that we use on maintenance of way trains and whatnot. Lastly, coming down our list of Norfolk Southern locomotives here, a couple SD80 Max. We use these in helper service on the layout. SD70 ACE, a couple of those as well, and an SD70M-2. SD70M with a flared radiator and phase 2 cab. I remember building a lot of these growing up when nobody made them, and then when Athearn announced them, I sold mine and picked up one of their models. Definitely, they did a great job on that. A couple SD70 standard cabs and SD60E. All of these are by Athearn, as they certainly have their fair share of the market as far as EMD presence and models go. Over here is our local power, which is really lacking in comparison to our 6-axle power. And I have 3 more locomotives I'm working on back at my house that'll be finished up here. I'm working on a GP50, an SD40-2 set that are both high hoods. Those will be paired together with all the details and lights. I'm also working on this guy now. You can see I wanted to include it, but it's still in the works. I'm adding the brass handrails and updating a couple things. I've had this one for quite a while. Also have this B32-8. This was one of my earliest custom done models, and I've kept it around and upgraded it. I added brass handrails. It was a B40-8 that I cut the shell down, had a B23-7 frame, all sorts of customizations to really get this thing to look like the prototype did before they sold them. 4612 is a GP59. This is another unique locomotive the Norfolk Southern had. It's different than a GP50 and different from a GP60. So this is an overland brass locomotive that I custom painted, put custom sound and lights in. I just didn't get around to customizing one and found a great price and deal on a brass one. So even though they don't run quite as well as the plastic models, they look great, and they do okay with a little tune-up here and there. Next are 4 SD40-2s. These are all customized Skeltrains locomotives. 3240 is a high hood that has got some really cool logos here kind of bleeding through the Norfolk Southern paint. You can see the old Southern kind of coming through. Same thing on the other side as well. You can see the old Southern logo bleeding through the Norfolk Southern logo there. You can find that, I guess you were able to find it on some of the prototype locomotives in the later days of their life. Next up are a couple custom painted locomotives. This is an old Norfolk and Western engine with the Norfolk and Western style trucks and bell and the long hood there, as well as an XBN unit that Norfolk Southern purchased and repainted in real life. So this is a BN unit that I got from Skeltrains, repainted it just like the prototype. It matches up there. 3216 is a pretty run-of-the-mill, out-of-the-box locomotive from Skeltrains, other than some weathering and sounds. And lastly here, a couple yard engines. Even though you don't see these much in real life anymore, they're fun to have. I remember seeing them in Nashville growing up, so we got a little set of those, and then a little slug here. I guess not a slug, I forget what you call these things, but it's a dummy. It's an old Athearn blue box, but fits the bill and definitely runs well with the 2 switchers that we have. Last diesels are the Dash-9s. These have got to be my favorite locomotives. My dad did these a couple years ago, and you can see they are just a tad bit shorter than the other Dash-9s, but we actually have a whole train of short locomotives and cars that are just kind of something fun to bring out every now and then and laugh at. I'll put a link to that in the description. I got a couple on YouTube from way back in the day if you want to check them out. Lastly are the 3 Norfolk and Western locomotives, steam locomotives. That's the J, the Y, and I think of the A class. I can't even remember, but anyways, the 3 steam locomotives here that we have in the museum on our layout, but they run. They all have sound and smoke and are really fun to see out on the layout from time to time, as well as a small museum locomotive as well that we've painted to kind of commemorate the railroads and the museum. So that is our locomotive update. This was our first steam locomotive we got way back in the day, but still runs. It just needs a little tune-up and some tenders as well. So that is our roster and our update for you guys. If you have any questions about anything, let me know in the comment section below. If you're interested in any of the sounds that I have, there's a good chance that they are either for sale on my Facebook page or for free on my Facebook page, just depending on who owns the rights to those sounds. So you can feel free to check them out on Facebook, and if you have any questions, let me know below. But thanks for your time. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.